"You've always been so unambitious, Maya," my dad said, his voice cutting through the chatter at the dinner table. "Not everyone is cut out for the big leagues, and that's fine, but leave the real work to people like your brother." I set my fork down carefully, my hands trembling under the table. "And yet somehow, except for you, Dad, my unambitious self is the only other person at this table with a track record of success," I said evenly, meeting his eyes. My brother Tyler smirked, the same infuriating, dismissive grin I'd seen my entire life. "My name is Maya Wilson. I'm 32 now, but when all of this began, I was just the overlooked middle child in a family where success was measured by flash and status. My dad, Robert Wilson, built one of the most successful real estate empires in Chicago. My older brother Tyler was his golden boy, the heir apparent to the business despite his carelessness. My younger sister Emma was the family darling, more interested in brunch and brand deals than anything resembling responsibility. And then there was me. Quiet, dependable, and according to my family, forgettable. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of chatter I wasn't part of. Tyler boasted about some new property deal he'd supposedly closed, though I'd overheard whispers at the last company event that it was riddled with issues. My dad beamed at him, asking pointed questions to keep the spotlight on his son. Emma chimed in here and there, sprinkling in anecdotes about her latest social escapades. Meanwhile, I sat quietly, pushing food around my plate, wondering why I still subjected myself to these dinners. When I was younger, I used to try to keep up, to impress them. I graduated near the top of my class and took on every internship I could find, thinking if I worked hard enough they'd finally see me. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. "You're too quiet," my dad would say. "You don't have the killer instinct for this business." It didn't matter that I outperformed my peers or that I had ideas to bring the company forward. They'd already made up their minds about me. The tipping point came a few years ago. Not that my family noticed. I'd been sitting in one of the company's weekly strategy meetings, a formality where my dad and Tyler made all the decisions while the rest of us watched. That day, I had a proposal, a detailed plan to turn a struggling property into a profitable residential complex. I'd spent weeks researching, running the numbers, and crafting a pitch I thought even my dad couldn't ignore. When it was finally my turn to speak, I barely got 2 sentences in before Tyler interrupted. "That location's a lost cause," he said dismissively. "We've already sunk too much into it. Let's move on." "I've actually found a way," I started, but my dad cut me off with a wave of his hand. "If Tyler says it's not worth it, then it's not worth it. Next item." I remember sitting there, my face burning, my carefully crafted plan forgotten as they moved on like I wasn't even in the room. That night, I made a decision. If they didn't want to listen to me in their company, I'd build my own. I didn't quit the family company outright. That would have drawn too much attention. Instead, I started small, working on my own projects quietly in the background. A rundown duplex on the outskirts of town became my first investment. It was all I could afford with the little I'd saved, but I saw the potential no one else did. I spent weekends painting walls, replacing fixtures, and learning the ins and outs of property management. When I sold it a year later, the profit was modest, but it was mine. And that was just the beginning. Over the next few years, I scouted undervalued properties across Chicago, partnering with Isabella Rodriguez, a savvy real estate investor I'd met through a mutual friend. Isabella was everything I needed in a business partner: smart, experienced, and just as determined to prove people wrong. Together, we built something remarkable, one property at a time. By the time I was 30, my portfolio was thriving. What started as a side hustle had grown into a legitimate business with properties spanning residential complexes, boutique office spaces, and even a few prime retail locations. Isabella and I ran everything under a company name no one in my family would recognize: Rodriguez Associates. I wasn't just building wealth, I was building a reputation. Quietly, steadily, I had become one of my father's fiercest competitors. The irony? My family had no idea. While they were busy managing their sprawling, mismanaged empire, I was buying up properties they'd written off as unprofitable and turning them into successes. Each deal felt like a private victory, a small step toward proving to myself that I was more than the shadow they'd cast me in. One evening, as I sat poring over financial reports, Isabella walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've been at it all day," she said, placing 1 cup in front of me. "Take a break, Maya. Even machines need to recharge." I smiled, taking a sip. I can't help it. Every time I see how well the numbers are trending, I think about the next move. There's this office building near the Loop I've been eyeing. Isabella raised an eyebrow as she settled into the chair across from me. "Let me guess. It's undervalued, ignored by every major player, but you've already figured out how to turn it into a gold mine?" "Pretty much," I admitted with a grin. "It's exactly the kind of property my dad and Tyler would laugh off, which makes it perfect." Isabella leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "Speaking of them, don't you think it's only a matter of time before they figure out who's behind Rodriguez Associates?" "Maybe," I said, shrugging. "But by the time they do, it won't matter. We're not just surviving. We're thriving. And besides," I hesitated, swirling the coffee in my cup, "part of me doesn't even care if they find out anymore. They've already dismissed me my whole life. I've learned to live without their approval." Isabella tilted her head, studying me. "You're not doing this for their approval, Maya. You're doing it for you. And if they ever do figure it out, well, let's just say I wouldn't mind being a fly on the wall when that happens." I chuckled, feeling the weight of her words settle over me. "You're right," I said. "I'm doing this for me. And whether they find out or not, it doesn't change the fact that we've built something incredible." Isabella raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. "To building something incredible." I clinked my cup against hers, a renewed sense of determination burning in my chest. To building something incredible. At every family gathering, my dad and Tyler never missed an opportunity to remind me of my so-called uselessness. "Maya, when's the last time you even stepped foot in the office?" My dad would sneer, shaking his head as if my very presence was an insult. "You know, for someone with shares in the company, you sure do a great job of making yourself invisible." Tyler, always eager to pile on, would chuckle and add, "Not that anyone notices, of course. It's not like the company's missing out on your valuable contributions." They thought they were clever, mocking me for stepping back, unaware of the real reason I distanced myself. I had stopped going to the office regularly the moment I started working with Isabella. At first, it was because I needed the time to focus on our projects. Later, it became a matter of self-preservation. Every visit was a reminder that, in their eyes, I was an afterthought, someone who didn't matter enough to be included or even taken seriously. I showed up only when absolutely necessary, attending shareholder meetings out of obligation and slipping out as soon as I could. To them, my absence was just more proof of my irrelevance. To me, it was a chance to build something far greater than they could ever imagine. From the beginning, Isabella had been the face of Rodriguez Associates. It was a strategic decision we made together. She was the one who handled the public engagements, the media interviews, and the high-profile negotiations. I preferred to stay behind the scenes, focusing on the strategy, analytics, and decision-making that drove our success. It wasn't that I was hiding, I just knew my strengths, and Isabella's confidence and charisma were unmatched when it came to dealing with people. It worked perfectly. To the outside world, Rodriguez Associates was Isabella's brainchild, a fast-growing real estate firm led by a savvy, ambitious woman with a sharp eye for undervalued properties. Investors admired her, competitors envied her, and the press couldn't get enough of her story. No one knew about the woman behind the curtain, the strategist pulling the strings and quietly steering the company's direction. Only a handful of trusted partners were aware that I was the architect behind the scenes, designing every move with meticulous precision. This anonymity was by design. It gave me the freedom to operate without scrutiny, especially from my family. My name wasn't on the website, my photo wasn't in the annual reports, and no one in the industry connected me to Rodriguez Associates. Even if someone had looked into our operations, they wouldn't have found my fingerprints on anything. To everyone outside of our tight circle, Maya Wilson was nothing more than a shareholder in her family's real estate empire, a name on paper with no active role in either company. And that's exactly how I wanted it. Not even my father or Tyler suspected that Rodriguez Associates had anything to do with me. To them, it was just another small competitor nipping at the edges of the market. They'd never think to look closer, never imagined that the company slowly outpacing them in certain areas was led by someone they dismissed as irrelevant. The irony wasn't just satisfying, it was my greatest weapon. But I knew this balance couldn't last forever. The bigger we grew, the more attention we'd attract. And one day, whether I was ready for it or not, my two worlds would collide. The industry gala was the kind of event my dad and Tyler thrived on. It was all about networking, rubbing shoulders with the who's who of real estate, and reminding everyone why Wilson Enterprises was considered a powerhouse. I wasn't planning on going. It wasn't really my scene. But Isabella insisted. "Come on, Maya," she said as she tossed an elegant black dress onto my couch. "You've earned a night to celebrate. Besides, it'll be fun to watch everyone squirm when they realize how far Rodriguez Associates has come." I reluctantly agreed, knowing my presence would likely go unnoticed. My dad and Tyler were sure to be there, but they'd written me off so thoroughly that I'd be just another face in the crowd. And I was fine with that. At least, that's what I told myself. The ballroom was breathtaking, the kind of opulence that screamed old money. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, waiters weaved through the crowd with trays of champagne, and the city's most powerful figures gathered in clusters, exchanging polite laughter and business cards. As soon as I spotted my dad and Tyler, I knew the night was about to become an exercise in patience. "Well, well," Tyler said, smirking as I approached their table. "Look who decided to show up. You know, Maya, these events are usually for people who actually contribute to the industry." "Be nice," my dad muttered, though his tone wasn't much kinder. He barely glanced at me as he adjusted his tie. "Just try not to embarrass us." I swallowed the retort bubbling in my throat and found a seat at a table near the back, where Isabella and a few of our closest colleagues were waiting. My dad and brother couldn't see me from there. "How's it going over there?" Isabella whispered, nodding toward my family. "Exactly as expected," I replied. "Let's just get through tonight." As the evening progressed, award after award was handed out, and Wilson Enterprises didn't take home a single one. My dad's expression grew darker with every passing announcement, and Tyler's usual bravado dimmed. I could see the frustration building between them, but I stayed out of it, content to watch from the sidelines. Then it happened. "And the final award of the night," the host announced, "goes to the firm that has shown unparalleled innovation and excellence in the real estate sector. This year's winner is Rodriguez Associates." My heart skipped a beat as applause erupted around the room. Isabella rose from her seat, beaming as she made her way to the stage. My dad and Tyler exchanged confused glances, clearly wondering how a smaller firm like Rodriguez Associates had managed to overshadow them. Isabella accepted the award gracefully, her poise and charisma commanding the room as she took the microphone. "Thank you," she began, her voice warm and steady. "This recognition means so much to Rodriguez Associates and to everyone who has contributed to our journey. When we started this company, we had a vision: to find value where others saw none, to innovate where others played it safe, and to build not just properties but opportunities. And tonight, being here among so many talented people, this award feels like validation of that vision." Applause rippled through the crowd, polite and appreciative, but Isabella wasn't finished. She adjusted the microphone and took a small step forward, her expression softening into something more personal. "But," she continued, her voice taking on a deeper resonance, "this moment isn't just about me, or even our team as a whole. It's about someone who has worked tirelessly behind the scenes, someone whose brilliance and determination have been the driving force behind Rodriguez Associates. I'm standing here tonight because of her vision, her strategic mind, and her unwavering commitment to excellence." I froze in my seat, my stomach tightening. Isabella's eyes swept across the room before landing on me, a small, knowing smile on her lips. Many of you may not know her name, but that's because she prefers it that way. She's not one for the spotlight, but without her, Rodriguez Associates wouldn't be the company it is today. The brain behind every deal we've closed, every risk we've taken, and every success we've earned is my partner and closest confidant, Maya Wilson. The room fell into stunned silence, and then the murmurs began. Heads turned in my direction, whispers growing louder as recognition spread like wildfire. My dad and Tyler sat frozen at their table, their expressions a mix of confusion, disbelief, and something I couldn't quite place. Humiliation, perhaps. My dad's jaw tightened while Tyler's smirk was wiped clean off his face. Isabella wasn't done. Maya's the kind of leader who doesn't need to shout to be heard, she continued. She lets her work speak for itself. She's the one who sees possibilities where others see failure, who takes risks others are too afraid to take, and who fights for what she believes in, no matter how many doubters she faces. Her brilliance has not only transformed this company but has set a new standard for what real estate innovation looks like, and I think it's time the world knows it. Her words hit me like a wave, each one breaking down the walls I'd built to protect myself from the doubt and dismissal I'd endured for years. The murmurs in the room grew louder, but so did the applause. My colleagues at the Rodriguez Associates table were on their feet, clapping and cheering. Isabella turned toward me, her hand outstretched. Maya, come join me. This moment is yours as much as it is mine. For a moment, I couldn't move. My heart pounded in my chest and my legs felt like they were made of lead. Then I saw Isabella's encouraging smile, the warmth in her eyes, and the applause of the room began to register. Slowly I stood, my knees shaky but my resolve strengthening with every step I took toward the stage. As I climbed the stairs and stepped into the spotlight, I could feel every pair of eyes on me, my father's, my brother's, and the room full of industry leaders who had no idea I'd been shaping this industry from the shadows. I reached Isabella's side, and she handed me the award, her hand resting on my shoulder as she leaned into the microphone one last time. This is Maya Wilson, Isabella said, her voice filled with pride. And if you haven't heard of her yet, trust me, you will. Standing there on stage with the weight of the award in my hands and the applause thundering around me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of validation, not from the crowd, but from myself. My eyes scanned the room briefly, landing on my father and Tyler. Their stunned expressions were priceless, a mix of shock, disbelief, and a flicker of something that might have been respect. Isabella leaned toward me, her voice low and steady. Say something, she whispered, her hand giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. I stepped up to the microphone, my heart pounding. I wasn't one for speeches, but this wasn't about grandeur. It was about being seen. I took a deep breath and spoke. Thank you, I began, my voice clear despite the lump in my throat. This is unexpected, but deeply meaningful. When Isabella and I started Rodriguez Associates, we knew we were taking a chance on properties others dismissed, on ideas others ignored, and on ourselves. Tonight is proof that those risks were worth it. The crowd clapped politely, but I wasn't done. To everyone who believed in us, thank you. And to those who didn't. I allowed myself a small smile. Well, thank you for underestimating us. It gave us the fuel to succeed. The laughter and applause that followed buoyed me. But my focus was elsewhere, on my father's expression, which had shifted from stunned to something unreadable, and Tyler, whose jaw was clenched so tightly I thought he might crack a tooth. I stepped back from the microphone, Isabella beaming beside me as the applause finally died down. We exited the stage together, her arm linked through mine. Now that, she said with a grin, was a moment worth savoring. As we returned to our table, I could feel the ripple of whispers following us, the weight of the room's attention still lingering. Isabella leaned over, her voice low but amused. I'd pay good money to know what's going through your dad's head right now. I glanced toward their table. My father sat stiffly, his hands clasped on the table in front of him, staring straight ahead. Tyler looked like he was ready to explode, his face flushed as he whispered something heated to my dad. Emma, ever the oblivious one, sipped her wine, her eyes darting between the two of them, as if trying to gauge whether the tension was worth interrupting her evening. "They'll come around," Isabella said, as if reading my thoughts. "Maybe not tonight. Maybe not ever in the way you deserve, but they'll have no choice but to recognize what you've built." "Maybe," I replied, though I wasn't sure I cared anymore. For once, their acknowledgement wasn't the goal. It was the byproduct of proving to myself that I could thrive without their approval. As the event wound down, I couldn't avoid them any longer. My dad approached our table, Tyler trailing a few steps behind. Isabella, ever poised, stood as he arrived, extending her hand with a gracious smile. "Mr. Wilson," she said warmly, "it's an honor to meet you." He shook her hand stiffly, his usual confidence absent. "Likewise," he replied, his voice strained. His eyes flicked to me, a mixture of pride and discomfort flickering in his expression. "Maya, we need to talk." Tyler snorted, crossing his arms. "Talk? What's there to talk about? You've clearly been busy undermining the family business behind our backs." Isabella's smile didn't waver, but her tone hardened just enough to send a chill through the air. "Undermining? I'd say Maya's been doing what you should have been doing. Innovating and succeeding. But I suppose we can leave that discussion for another time." Tyler's face turned a deeper shade of red, but my dad held up a hand to silence him. "Enough," he said sharply. He turned back to me. "Maya, can we step outside for a moment? Just the two of us?" I followed my dad out onto the terrace, the cool night air a welcome relief from the intensity of the ballroom. The city lights stretched out before us, glittering against the dark sky. He stood silently for a moment, his hands resting on the railing, his shoulders unusually tense. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't know," he said quietly, his voice heavy with something I couldn't quite place. "Regret, maybe. I had no idea you were capable of all this." I crossed my arms, leaning against the railing beside him. "That's because you never cared to find out," I replied, my tone even but firm. "You and Tyler were so busy dismissing me that you didn't bother to see what I was doing. You wrote me off without a second thought." He sighed, his gaze fixed on the skyline. "I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me from what?" I asked, unable to hide the frustration in my voice. "From proving you wrong? From showing you that I could do more than you ever gave me credit for?" He turned to face me, his expression earnest for the first time in years. "From failing," he admitted. "This business, it's brutal, Maya. I didn't think you had the—" He paused, searching for the right words. "The what?" I interrupted. "The guts? The brains? The drive? What exactly did you think I lacked?" His silence was telling, and for a moment I felt the sting of old wounds reopening. But then he shook his head. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I see that now. Tonight made it impossible to deny." A couple of days later, my dad requested a meeting at my office. He showed up precisely on time, wearing his usual sharp suit and carrying a briefcase that somehow made him look even more imposing. Isabella was already waiting in the conference room when he arrived, poised and unflappable as always. I joined them, feeling a mix of curiosity and inevitability about whatever he was about to propose. He wasted no time getting to the point. "Maya, Isabella," he began, opening his briefcase and sliding a folder across the table. "I've spoken with the board, and we're prepared to make an offer to acquire Rodriguez Associates. We believe your expertise and vision would be an invaluable addition to Wilson Enterprises." Isabella raised an eyebrow, her expression cool as she glanced at me before responding. "That's a generous offer, Mr. Wilson," she said diplomatically, "but I think Maya should have the first word on this." My dad looked at me expectantly, his confidence barely masking the uncertainty beneath it. I didn't even need to open the folder to know my answer. I leaned back in my chair, meeting his gaze directly. "No," I said simply. His brows furrowed, clearly not expecting such an immediate and decisive response. "Maya, at least consider—" "No," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "I've worked too hard to build something that's mine. I'm not going to give that up to go back to a company where I spent years being overlooked and dismissed. I'm free now, Dad, and I'm staying that way." The silence that followed was heavy, but I didn't regret my words. Isabella smiled faintly, a silent show of support, while my dad sat back, looking as though he didn't quite know what to do with himself. For once, he couldn't argue. He couldn't deny my success, and he couldn't buy my respect. Finally, he nodded, closing the folder and standing up. "I underestimated you, Maya," he said, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I won't make that mistake again." As he left the room, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I didn't need his validation anymore. I had built my own path, my own success, and I was finally free to walk it without looking back. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of media attention and business opportunities. Rodriguez Associates was no longer the industry's best-kept secret. We were front and center, and everyone wanted a piece of what we'd built. Isabella thrived in the spotlight, handling interviews and negotiations with the same grace she'd always shown. But now, for the first time, I was stepping out of the shadows too. My name was in the headlines, my story was being told, and my expertise was being recognized. It was strange, being seen after so many years of invisibility, but it was also liberating. My family's reaction was complicated. Tyler remained bitter, making snide comments whenever our paths crossed. Emma, always more interested in drama than business, seemed fascinated by the whole situation, asking endless questions about my secret life as if it were some kind of soap opera. But my dad was different. He didn't apologize outright, but his behavior spoke volumes. He started including me in conversations, asking for my opinion on deals and treating me with a respect I'd never experienced before. It wasn't everything I'd once wanted, but it was something. And more importantly, it didn't matter anymore. I'd found my own worth, built my own empire, and proven to myself that I was more than the shadow they'd cast me in. One evening, as I sat in my office reviewing the latest batch of investment proposals, Isabella knocked on my door. "Got a minute?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Always," I replied, setting down my pen. She smiled, but there was something thoughtful in her expression. "I've been thinking about that night at the gala," she said. "About what it meant to finally tell the world who you are." I leaned back in my chair, considering her words. It was terrifying, I admitted, but also freeing. I spent so many years hiding, so afraid of being seen and judged, and when it finally happened, when everyone knew who I was and what I'd built, it wasn't the disaster I'd imagined. "It was the beginning of something new," Isabella said. "A chance to be yourself, fully and completely, without apology." She was right. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding behind anyone's expectations or trying to fit into someone else's definition of success. I was simply me. "Thank you," I said, meeting her eyes. "For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, for pushing me to step into the light, for being the partner I never knew I needed." Isabella's smile widened. "Thank you for being the strategist, the visionary, and the friend I never knew I needed. We make a pretty good team, don't we?" "The best," I agreed. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything that's happened, I can't help but marvel at how much has changed. Just a few years ago, I was the invisible daughter, the overlooked employee, the family disappointment. Today, I'm the co-founder of one of Chicago's most successful real estate firms, a recognized leader in my industry, and most importantly, someone who knows her own worth. The journey wasn't easy. It required sacrifice, patience, and an unwavering belief in myself even when no one else believed in me. But it was worth it. Every late night, every risky investment, every moment of doubt, it was all worth it. My family's opinion of me has shifted, but their approval is no longer the prize I'm chasing. I've learned that the most important validation comes from within, from the knowledge that you've built something meaningful with your own hands and your own mind. Rodriguez Associates continues to grow, and with it my reputation as a force to be reckoned with in the real estate world. Isabella and I have plans for expansion, new markets to explore, and bigger challenges to tackle. The future is bright, and for the first time in my life, I'm the one holding the reins. To anyone listening who feels overlooked, underestimated, or invisible, I want you to know that your worth isn't determined by other people's recognition. You have the power to build your own empire, to define your own success, and to prove to yourself that you're capable of more than anyone imagined. Don't wait for permission to be great. Don't wait for validation to pursue your dreams, and don't let anyone convince you that you're not enough, because you are. The most beautiful part of this story isn't the revenge or the vindication. It's the freedom. The freedom to be yourself, to pursue your passions, and to build a life that reflects your values and your vision. That's a victory worth celebrating. Hey there, did you enjoy this story? I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family dynamics, workplace challenges, or moments when you had to prove yourself. Have you ever been underestimated, only to surprise everyone with what you were capable of? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone else who's going through something similar. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life dramas and inspiring tales of triumph. Thanks for listening, and remember, you're more powerful than you know.